Cool. G'day, everybody, and welcome to October's meetup. I can't believe it's been October now. It's insane. October, it's insane. It's literally we're now rushing towards the end of the year. This is the time when people start procrastinating about Christmas. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm just going to quickly see if I can share my screen again, and we'll just quickly get started. If you've got any questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat, whether you're in Teams or vice versa. And then we will get, we will kick things off. I'm just going to share that, pull that over. I'm just going to quickly just run through a couple of slides. By a couple of slides, I mean probably about 3. And then I will be handing it over to our distinguished guests from ScriptRunner. So let's get kicked off. So first things first, welcome. Thank you for coming to the Brisbane Infrastructure and DevOps User Group. I'm your host, Michael. I would say more facilitator is probably a better word. I just kind of try and get people to come and talk about really cool stuff. We're proudly sponsored by Hudson Recruiting. If you're considering getting yourself another job, you're a specialist in something, especially within Australia, consider going reaching out to Hudson. They're really, really good. I know the guys personally. They generally are wanting to help you improve your career as well as also finding you a job that you really enjoy. So yeah, if you think recruiting, think Hudson. Also want to say we also thank a massive thank you and to ScriptRunner. ScriptRunner also pay our meetup costs. They're also an integral part of the formerly of the PowerShell user group, but we've pretty much just ScriptRunner just continued to go on board, continued with us. And ScriptRunner is also been talking today, which is even awesomer. And we're going to be able to see some really cool things. All right, so what's next up in November? This is going to be probably the final one of the year. We probably might be taking a bit of a break over Christmas. We'll be taking a break over Christmas. So December, January, we're going to take a couple of months off. Everyone can kind of reset. I know that's generally a busy time of year for everyone. So we're just going to we're going to take a couple of months off ourselves, spend time with family, go from there. So, but next up in November, we have Nicholas Bissell. Nick is going to be doing a talk on PowerShell. He's a really, he was one of the technical editors within the PowerShell modern IT automation with PowerShell textbook. Very, very smart guy. So I definitely think that his talk's going next month when we pop it up and find out what's going on with it. It's going to be really, really good. Really, really down-to-earth guy. Really, really easy. So definitely, if you want to learn a little bit about PowerShell, he's going to be having a bit of a chat next month. And he's based in the UK, so it's going to be a bit challenging for him. I think it's going to be like 4 a.m. for him, so he'll be probably a little bit tired. But anyway, now I have the honor of introducing our esteemed guest, Mr. Heiko Bren from ScriptRunner. A little bit about Heiko. He is, mate. You've been with ScriptRunner for quite some time now. You've been over 5 years or 4 years.
Yeah, that's true. Almost 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and we've been partnered for pretty much that time as well. I'll say it's a little bit about that time, but ScriptRunner, so Haiku's generally does a lot of the sales, a lot of the demos. And he's a really great guy. I've worked with him personally as well. Very easy to get along with, and and as you can see in the background, he enjoys playing and making music. So.
Yeah.
Over to you. All right, I am going to stop talking.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks a lot for the kind words. Yeah. So we're working together with your user group like almost 4.5 years, I would say. Yeah, I think you were the first ones that we kind of work with, which is kind of interesting because we're based in Germany, so it's not the smallest distance between you guys and us, but it works perfect. So I'm great to be here again. So I would like to give a general overview about what we're doing, of course, and then also obviously talk about the things that have changed since last year, where, yeah, of course, there are new versions coming out, there are new ways to deploy our software. So I want to give you, yeah, the whole package, and in hopefully not too much time. So I would start sharing my screen. And then, so yes, I have a few slides, but then of course, most of the time we will take a look at my environment and check out how ScriptRunner works and what it can do for you when it comes to automating all kinds of recurring tasks. Okay, so that should have worked, I think.
Yep, I can see that. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So maybe before we continue, I'm gonna paste my contact information into the chat so people can just follow me if they want to. So that's that, and I have a couple of more links during the session, I think, that I can share with you. And yeah, all right. So yeah, so my name is Heiko. I'm with ScriptRunner as already mentioned for almost 5 years, and so the title is Automate, Delegate, and Relax, which could look like this, or maybe it could look like this. This is one of the results of playing with DALL-E 3 in the last couple of weeks, which I think is really interesting. Sometimes challenging, but it's always fun. That's what I think. And because it's Halloween, I also try to get a picture in this theme, which I think is pretty cool as well. But anyway, so as I said, so what I wanted to talk about and what I want to show you is how ScriptRunner can kind of help you to accelerate your automation journey with PowerShell. And what it means, I will talk about later a little bit. So quickly about me. Again, a picture created by DALL-E 3. Pretty cool, I think. Yeah, so I'm responsible for all our activities outside of our home market, which is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. That's where we are based. And yeah, well, I'm old, so I'm in the IT industry for quite some time, almost 30 years. I'm a PowerShell enthusiast, which don't mix it up with a PowerShell expert. That's something totally different for me. Enthusiast means I'm really, it's really amazing what people are doing with PowerShell. That's really awesome. And my first experience was with Exchange 2007, quite a while ago. And together with Ryan, I am running a local PowerShell user group over here in Germany. It's called PowerShell User Group Rhein-Neckar. We are meeting online at the moment. We're probably going to switch to hybrid beginning of next year. But if you're interested, we have another upcoming talk with Gail on the 15th of November. And he's going to talk about PowerShell, MS SQL, T-SQL, and Simple Root for PowerShell. So if you're interested, and now would be a good time to put in the link, which I don't have at the moment, but I can definitely pull it up later. So you can find us on Meetup. And yeah, so that's me. Quickly about the company. So this is us, puzzle team, lining up as a PowerShell logo. As mentioned, we are based in Germany. We've been around since 2014. So next year it's kind of a 10-year anniversary. We're about 25 people, and we have about 1,900 PowerShell scripts on our GitHub repo for all kinds of different platforms and use cases, starting with Active Directory, Office 65, Azure, VMware, Citrix, SQL database, all kind of stuff, SharePoint. So if you're interested, yeah, you can go to our github.com/scriptrunner/action packs. And then let me just put this again. Oops, I put it here. Put this in the chat as well. So you might want to check them out. It's sometimes it's more about maybe getting some inspiration about what you can do with PowerShell. Sometimes it's really about, okay, I take this script, I download it, and then I'm starting to modify it. And there are also new scripts coming up all the time. So especially in the MS Graph area, because thanks to Microsoft, things are moving there. There are new scripts coming, being published. Yeah, almost every week, I would say. All right, and then we have a couple of goodies. We have PowerShell cheat sheet. One of the things that we had for a long time just got updated. Meaning it's not just, well, it looks nicer, but it also has some very interesting new information in the cheat sheet about, just looking at it, PowerShell 7. For example, Exchange Online, splatting, and secret management module. These are things that we added to the overall, let's say, get help for your office wall. So yeah, you can go to our website. You can get it as a PDF, but you can also get it physically. I don't know if you can see it here, but it's something that you can put on your office wall. So it is really a helpful thing for your daily work with PowerShell. And I'm also going to put that into that chat here. All right. Okay. So that's that. Now, okay, what's the idea with ScriptRunner before we actually moving to the solution? So the idea of ScriptRunner is changing, improving, whatever you want to call it, the way organizations and people are using PowerShell. Why? Because sometimes the way people using PowerShell looks like this, where you have all kinds of scripts written by different people, stored in different places, and being the person who wrote the script knows what it does. Like, okay, it starts an onboarding, it creates a new VM or whatever. It's great because you know where to find it and what it does. But if you think about making this kind of the foundation of your, or one of the foundations of your IT automation platform or strategy, if you will, then that's difficult, right? Because to know where to go to find the right script that does the right job, difficult. So the idea of ScriptRunner is to turn that into something that is kind of well organized, where you exactly know where's the script to start an onboarding, create users, shared mailboxes, change group memberships, whatever the use case might be, and give it to someone else. Now, giving to someone else, in our case, doesn't mean they have to do something on the command line and happily writing any parameters and stuff like that and making a lot of errors. In our case, it is about providing also a nice user interface so that it's easy for people who are not into PowerShell kind of actually working with it without knowing it. Let's put it this way. So it's really, and having a centralized and secure way of managing everything that has to do with PowerShell, which means it's about standardizing, automating, delegating all kind of tasks. As long as they're built on PowerShell, then you can trigger these scripts in 3 different ways. Interactive, which means this is where the delegation comes into the picture, where you want to allow people, maybe like junior admins or help desk people, or maybe even you want to create maybe some self-service end user scenarios. That's what you can do. Then scheduled execution is where organizations say, okay, we have all this Windows task scheduler stuff going on multiple boxes, and we don't really have an overview and control about what's happening. So they put this into ScriptRunner as well. And event-driven, meaning you can have connectors, you can allow other systems to trigger scripts in ScriptRunner as well. And that is something that we see with a lot of different platforms out there: ServiceNow, Jira, SAP, SharePoint workflows. As long as there is a system that is able to talk REST and it's able to authenticate against ScriptRunner, you can put them together and build a kind of end-to-end automation, if you will. Now, as a result, you have a complete monitoring about all the PowerShell activities. You know what's happening. You see which user did what. I think I have a quick screenshot. Maybe I can put this here. Yeah, so you have this reporting engine here that allows you to see which user triggered a script that connected, in this case, to Exchange Online, and what have been the parameters, what have been the output when the user successfully, when the script ran successfully, or maybe even if it didn't work, of course, you can start using that for analyzing what went wrong with the execution. You have a statistic and you have a real-time monitor where you can see what's actually happening right now. So this is kind of view into the PowerShell host, including the option to maybe cancel the execution if necessary. So this is about monitoring becomes more and more important for organizations to be in control, especially if they start delegating tasks. They still want to see, okay, what's actually happening. And all that is possible because you're centralizing your scripts and modules. With ScriptRunner, you're centralizing your credential management. That means you can store your credentials centrally, either in the Windows Credential Store on the ScriptRunner server, which actually runs in your environment on-prem, or in the cloud as a self-hosted solution, or it could be password servers that you want to integrate, where ScriptRunner is talking to this password servers in real time to get the credentials to be able to connect via PowerShell to your backend system, what you want to manage. And when you think about delegation and enabling people that maybe never heard about PowerShell, then it's important to see that PowerShell itself happened here on the right side where it says ScriptRunner so on. So it's never a user or system that actually runs a script. They tell ScriptRunner to run the script for them in the background. That's why we call it execution proxy right here. So this is where the PowerShell logistic happens. Running the scripts, access to the modules, to the credentials, to the scripts, and the systems that you want to manage. And here the users, you are enabling to do them certain things, trigger certain tasks based on the configuration in ScriptRunner, where you say, okay, I want to enable this group of people to reset a password, to set out of office, to create a new user or something like this. So it's a complete separation between PowerShell and the execution of PowerShell and all the bits and pieces that has to do with the PowerShell logistics, if you will, and the users on the right side. So that's where this credential management, of course, comes into the picture. And then last but not least, coming back to the interactive approach, we need to be able to make this accessible to someone who is not knowing anything about PowerShell. And this is where the capability comes in to the picture, where we automatically translate every PowerShell script into a web form, where you can decide what parameters should be visible, which parameters should be plain text field, which parameters should be mapped to a query that comes back with a list of users, list of machines, list of VMs, list of whatever information the user should be able to pick and choose from, and enable you to have different roles, different people with different responsibilities, where not everybody sees everything. You can say this, they are responsible for this region, or for this group of users, or this group of machines, and then that's exactly what you can do with the configuration of ScriptRunner and the fact that we are automatically translating every script into a web form with very many different options. I will show you a few later on where you can say, okay, I want to display a lot of information, but I only want to allow the user to change maybe the title of a user, for example, but they should see all the details like who's the manager, address, and stuff like that. But in a read-only mode, for example. Yeah, so that's in short what ScriptRunner is all about. And so with this, I would actually move over to my machine and let's start looking at it. And also let's start talking about the things that are new in the solution since last year. So one of the things that we added, which you don't see in the solution itself, but I think it's an important step forward, is now you can get ScriptRunner also from the Azure Marketplace. So if you're in the Azure Marketplace and you search for ScriptRunner, you will find this page. And the very easy way to get this up and running in your own Azure subscription. I think that's a really cool additional way of getting ScriptRunner to run in your environment if you want to install it. Something else that we added is a little online lab. So if, let's say, after I showed you a little bit around, you said, okay, I would like to get some hands-on experience, then one step, of course, would be, okay, you install it in your environment. Another step could be you go to our website to ScriptRunner.com demo server. And I'm going to put this into the chat as well. Because here you can say, okay, I want to check out ScriptRunner and from a administrative perspective, and I can go in. You can go in here and you can browse through the user interface, things that I'm going to show you later on, of course. But this is, I think, nice because you get some good understanding about how ScriptRunner works without actually installing it, and you could also, of course, change the role and say, okay, now I want to be see how it looks like if I'm someone from the help desk team, and then you can just switch the role, say, okay, let's see how ScriptRunner looks like if I'm a help desk person. What can I do in this role? So this is, I think, pretty cool stuff that we added to get a quick hands-on without installing it yourself. And yeah, something else that I can't show you, but which is part of the solution right now since a few months ago, is also support for OpenID Connect, which of course means support for things like Okta, for example. So if you have this kind of systems in place for authentication, that's something that you can use now with ScriptRunner as well. So I think that's also an interesting and important step forward when it comes to how to implement ScriptRunner. Yeah, coming back to the general idea and maybe a couple of use cases. So what we see here is a ScriptRunner portal. It's a role-based portal. So here I'm logged in as an administrator. So that's why I see a lot of different options here to configure stuff, which we're going to go through step by step. And if I'm switching the browser and the role, this is what happens if you're using ScriptRunner and you are in a role of a help desk person, meaning you can trigger the execution of tasks that have been delegated to you. So each tile represents a use case. And what kind of use case I see as a user, that of course depends on the configuration of ScriptRunner, meaning you could have users maybe just 2 or 3 tiles, maybe some have 25 tiles. And as we talk about PowerShell, it can be, of course, anything like Active Directory Exchange. You see all the examples here. I mean, you know, it's PowerShell, so everything that you can do with PowerShell, you can add here into ScriptRunner. All right, so that's the roles in general. And so what's new compared to last year as well? So last year I still had to switch back and forth between the portal and the so-called admin app because we didn't have everything configuration-wise into the new portal. That has changed now because now we have the queries as part of the solution. We have the actions, which are the actual use cases, which we're going to take a look at in more details as well. So they are now all part of the portal. So no need to be back and forth. In fact, if you install the solution today from scratch, there is no admin app at all. So everything is portal based. So, and what does it mean? So again, as I'm an administrator, I have a dashboard. I can see all the overviews of some activities where you can see a lot of schedule stuff has happened. I have my monitoring area, I have my configuration area, and I have a couple of settings. Now, what it all starts with is, of course, the script. So here you have a area where you see all your scripts. In my case, about 1,200 scripts. Here in my configuration, I can work with filters. I can say I only want to see my Azure scripts, for example, and then I can click on a script. I can see the details. I can see the header information. I can see the parameters in the script, and I can use the browser-based code editor if you want to. So for organizations that are not using things like Git or Azure DevOps, but they still want to have multiple people managing scripts, that's what you can do right here, because you can check in scripts. There is a change history. You can go back to previous versions. So that's all part of the portal. Of course, it's also very easy to add new scripts. So here is the upload scripts area. You could say, okay, I have a new script that I want to make part of the configuration. Very easy. And then, of course, you can also create scripts from scratch. Or as you can see here, you could get access to the scripts that are part of our GitHub repository, where you can say, okay, yes, I'm looking for a specific script. I can take a look at what it does. You can say, okay, looks fine. And then I can save it locally, and then I can start using it, modifying it, whatever I want to do with it. And then, of course, something else that we added is a ChatGPT integration. So here you can see it says AI-powered script, meaning I could do something like, I want to create a new Active Directory user. And well, and if we're lucky and ChatGPT is in a good mood, we will hopefully at one point we will see a result that not just shows the plain commandlet and its parameters, but a well-formed PowerShell script with a synopsis, with a try-catch block, with a parent block, with also some specifics that come with ScriptRunner, for example, multi-language support. Okay, this looks a bit strange, but okay, anyway, but I can think you get the idea. So if you're using ChatGPT, you know, results may vary. So this is a good example. But what you can see here, for example, here, multi-language support. So we have the language prefixes that tells us what to display if someone is switching to Spanish, for example. So this SRES prefixes. This is what you can, of course, do manually in all your scripts to tell us what to display for French, Spanish, German, and English. But in this case, it was done in the background already because the system message that we sent with the sentence, I want to create a new Active Directory user, was, okay, use this language prefixes to create these different settings for all the supported languages. We have a parent block. We have a try-catch block. So this result looks really weird. So this is, yeah. So as I said, sometimes, and if you've done it yourself, the results are really different sometimes. What I want to show you is here, there are a couple of ScriptRunner specific variables that you can use. For example, the result message that this is how you manage what the user should see if either the script execution in the background was successful or it failed. And so this is already part. So meaning, as always with ChatGPT, instead of starting with a plain page, you already have something to start with. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. So this is a not so good example. I saw, and typically the results are much, much better. But anyway, so this is just an option that is added. Of course, it requires you to have an OpenAI key that you make part of the configuration so that the ScriptRunner can communicate in the background with ChatGPT to get the results. So typically, I would say the results, if it's about modules that have been around for quite some time, like AD, Exchange, VMware, things like that, Azure, AC, for compute, for example, it's pretty good. If you're trying to do things with like more with modules like maybe Graph, the results are, well, they will be, let's put it this way, they will be better in the future, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, so this is how you can, in this case, use ChatGPT directly in the configuration. And what you also can do, talking about ChatGPT, you can also use it in existing scripts. So let's say I have a script. Okay, this is empty. It's not so well. We could have used that as well. But let's go for maybe another one. So what you could do is you could say, okay, this is already checked out. And you could say, okay, for whatever reason, I want to have, I need a function. Yeah, I don't know, create a function to find blocked words, for example. Then same thing happens in the background, communicating with ChatGPT, coming back with hopefully a good starting point, let's put it this way, to have a function that does what you have asked for. So, so two integrations of ChatGPT and ScriptRunner now. One is to creating a complete new script from scratch with the help of ChatGPT, and the other one is modifying things in existing scripts and asking ChatGPT to help for creating function, creating for each loop, whatever the use case might be. And sometimes it takes a little bit, as we can see, so the communication. And what I found is when I see that, okay, generating the code takes a little bit longer, typically the results are also not that good. I don't know if this is just coincidence but that's what I see. Well, maybe we can come back to this to see what we will see as a result later on. All right. Okay. So and maybe I should have done it in anyway. Yeah. So that is something that is part of the overall script functionality. So creating new scripts, managing your existing ones, using ChatGPT for modifications and for changing and for creating scripts. So that's the scripting part. Now, if you say, okay, you have your scripts already managed in things like ChatGPT in GitHub or Azure DevOps and things like that, then of course you can synchronize your scripts down to ScriptRunner. At the moment, that's done by a scheduled action, which I can show you later on. In the future, and I think last year I already talked about our ScriptRunner vNext version, which is still under development, but we will have a first release beginning of next year that will have a directly integrated support for Azure DevOps and Git, so that you can define where are your repositories, what scripts do you want to synchronize to ScriptRunner, and then it happens within the backend automatically. By the way, with this version, we will also see a direct support for Azure Key Vault, which is a nice segue to the next topic, which are the credentials. So credentials, obviously, we need to connect to the backend systems. They can be stored two ways: Windows Credential Store or password service. So at the moment, we support Pleasant, Psychotic, and CyberArk. And as I said, so in this vNext version coming up beginning of next year, there will be an integrated Azure Key Vault integration. For now, what you can do is you can create your credentials locally or asking for the credentials from the password servers. And that could be user password, any kind of other client secrets, could be SSH keys if we talk about PowerShell 7, managing Linux boxes. So this is how you centralize all the secret information that you need to connect to your backend systems. And then in the next step, because that alone is like, okay, yes, I have like this one here, I have a list of, this is the ID of the password that or credential that I want to use to connect for Exchange. But that alone, of course, doesn't do anything, because in the next step, you can bind them with targets. So targets are the actual backend systems that you want to manage. So let's say you want to do something with MS Graph. You can create a graph target, and the target is always about what systems do you want to connect to and how do we get there? What kind of credential can we use? And so here it's only working for MS Graph. It could be also something that you combine with other services like Teams or Exchange. That pretty much depends on how you manage also your app registrations and your certificates. So I tend to have individual targets for each service, so I can have individual app registrations that I can tell what they should actually, what kind of permissions they should have. So in this case, it would be, it's an app registration that is able to work with mail, which also means here in the target, I'm telling the target what kind of modules should be loaded. It could also be multiple ones. And the idea is to get all this logistic information into the target so that later on, whenever I select this target, ScriptRunner knows what to do, where to go to, which credential to use, or which secret, and which module should be loaded. So I don't have to have this information in my scripts anymore because the target knows what to do. And also means, of course, if I'm using this in 20 different use cases and I need to change it, then I only have to do it once in this target, and then all the other use cases know what to do. So that's, of course, very helpful, especially if you have a whole bunch of different systems that you want to manage. I mean, what we actually see, even though everybody talks about cloud and stuff like that, I would say 90% of the people who are starting to use ScriptRunner, they start to do something with Active Directory. It's still the case. And so just to show you that, so what this looks like is, okay, you're telling ScriptRunner where to connect to, what's the system, what's the machine, what's the service, and what's the credential. And of course, the credential is actually is part of the list of credentials that we saw in the credential area. So that's how you get this mapping between where do I want to connect to and what is the actual credential that we want to use. And then there's a bunch of course, advanced settings that say, okay, yes, I cannot connect directly to the systems I want to manage. You can confine and define a jump host in between, or maybe there is a chia endpoint that you want to connect to, and from there the connection is able to be established, and you would do exactly that here in the target section. And if you have, let's say if you are for example, in an MSP environment where you say, okay, we are managing 75 different Office 365 tenants, then you can make them part of the configuration, and you can create target collections. Meaning you can say, okay, I have some housekeeping process that happens every night, and I don't want to select all the tenants all the time, especially because they're removing and adding tenants constantly. Then you can put it into a target collection, and if something is changing, you're adding or you're removing your tenants right here, and the next time ScriptRunner uses it, it knows exactly, okay, what other systems I need to connect to in the background. And then there's also an execution mode where you can decide, if you have these collections, how should this be executed in parallel or in sequence? What should happen if something doesn't work? So that's really helpful, especially for, I would say, this MSP environments where you want to have an easy way to process and run scripts on maybe 120 different tenants every night, and you definitely don't want to pick and choose them individually every time. So that's why we have this target collections. All right, the next step are the queries. So the queries are here to make sure the users don't have to pick and they have to type things like usernames, VM names, Azure VM sizes, or things like that. So it's about having a list of information that gives the user the chance to select from a list. And these lists can be as easy as simple as an AD list. It could be Azure, it could be MS Graph, it could be a scripted query where you go out to a database and to a CRM system and you collect data. At the end, you have two things. You have something that you want to show to the user, which we call the display value, and we have the parameter value, which is the information that we are using when we actually execute the scripts in the background. And it can be something like this, where you have to one-to-one mapping display and parameter value, or you say, okay, but I need a lot more information for my script. So what you can do is you could say, okay, I'm using a query where the user still sees just the name of a user, but in the background, I have all this information available that I can use in my script to do whatever is necessary. And so that's, of course, very helpful, because in the past, to get all this different information, you would have to create multiple queries. Now you can have everything one query, and it come back with all the data that you need in your underlying script. And as I said, so queries can be AD based, can be Azure based, can be scripted. You can have also static lists. And the idea is, again, people can pick and choose from whatever use case we're talking. And all these things that we looked at, scripts, credential, targets, and queries, they end up in what we call actions. And actions are the actual use case. This is the item that you want to, like the runbook, that you want to delegate, that you want to automate, that you want to manage centrally. And yeah, the simple way of starting seeing this this concept is really the reset password scenario, because it's always good to show the concept before we look into the configuration. I would switch to the help desk role. So let's imagine we would like to delegate something like this to a help desk person, or maybe to a line of business user. And so this is where I'm going to switch back to the other browser, because now I'm in the role of a help desk person. So here I'm on the receiving end. I'm consuming use cases that have been delegated to me. And as you can see here, and we can take a look at the number of examples here, of course. VM-based, AD-based, Azure-based, Exchange-based. And so the one that we can start looking at is the reset password. Let's go in here. So what do we see here as a user? We have this description here, which is markup. So you can work with all kinds of formatting. By the way, if you're talking about multi-language, if I'm switching to Spanish, for example, we can see all these different parameter descriptions changing. That's from the script, coming from the underlying script directly. And we can see 4 parameters. I can select an OU. I can select the user. And here, what happens is I'm selecting an OU, and then dynamically this list changed right here. So this is like leading the user through, like in this case, a 2-step process. Sometimes it's, of course, could be 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. The idea is no typing. User we're leading the user through the step. And so here we need to create a password, and it has to follow some certain rules, because now, as you could see, maybe here, there's in the lower left corner is the play button, which is grayed out because I haven't typed in a number and a special character. And only if that's correct, I can click on this button, which means now I can tell ScriptRunner in the background to run the script for me with my input. And the script itself, very quickly, if we go in here, I think it's this one here. You can see that here we have this multi-language information. Down here, we have a validate length and a validate pattern. That's what we are checking. Meaning before, instead of running something, coming back with an error, this information can be checked before something happens. And then as a result, we get this message back saying, okay, that was successful. What happened in parallel here is that I used a function that's actually part of our action packs on GitHub as well, to push this information about this use case and the triggering of this use case directly into a Teams channel using the Teams webhook here, where I can say, okay, somebody did a password reset for this user, and it was triggered by this user from this IP address. So this is information that, of course, we can provide because we know who clicked on the tile to do something. And that can be very helpful. So, of course, you can still send out emails for specific things, and of course, it happens, but this is a more proactive way of getting information across when something critical happens and you want your operations team to get the information about this immediately. So that is something that you can do directly right here. Yeah, so this is from a very basic level what you can do. So let's say I talked about scenarios where you want to provide information, but you don't want people to be able to change everything. That's why we one of the last releases, we introduced what we call a read-only parameter. So what I can do, I can select the user. And now based on this queries that comes back with all these different attributes, we can see all the information like city and stuff like that. But the only thing that I could change, which I won't because Angus is still the lead guitarist of AC/DC, which is good. But everything else here is read-only. So this is read-only parameters. And so I can see all the data, all the information, but I'm only able to change this specific parameter. Something else we added, also I think since last year, is the possibility to say, okay, I have things where I want to have an onboarding with 15 new people, or I want to create 20 new VMs, and I have the information somewhere in a CSV or in a text file. So you can create this drop zone, and you can allow users to drag and drop or to select text file, CSV file, and then use this data, obviously, to do whatever you want to do in the background with this information. Now here I'm only displaying it, obviously, but you get the idea, right? You could track all this information and then use it to create all these users in the right OUs and things like that. So this is, of course, very important when it comes to bulk activities right here. And yeah, just for the fun of it, we also, I think you had Doug as a guest in your user group, I think also this year, right? Where he talked about his PowerShell AI module. Or you did a session where you talked about PowerShell AI. Now, yes, this way. So of course, this is a module I also really like, and I did some example. If it makes sense, I have no idea. It's up to you, but I just did it. So the idea is here: you can create an action when you say, okay, I don't want to allow ChatGPT being used in the company context for whatever reason, and then I could allow to use an action, and you can do something like, okay, show the top 10 PowerShell commandlets. I don't know, use markup, for example. And then, okay, now in the background, ScriptRunner should go out. So that's different from the script generation because that's totally integrated. This is something that is based on the PowerShell AI module that is used in the background and comes back with an error, with a list. Now, what I've done here, I've created a little additional thing that is just checking. Let's say if there is some information part of the prompt that I don't want to allow, and because this word is very sensitive, I stop the execution. And also what happens here is this is also documented in the background here, for example, in the Teams chat. Just a little fun thing, but yeah, I thought because working with this PowerShell AI module is really cool. Now, okay, so here we are in the portal, so all these use cases can become available. What you can also do, you can say, I have these use cases and I want to plug them into a existing self-service portal or intranet website. So let's say you want to allow people to create new VMs in Azure. So this could be a use case right here where people can choose the OS, they can choose the location, and they can choose very important, the sizes. So this is what you can see here, what we call a portal widget, because every action has a unique ID. So you can say, I want to have the action 1 to 3. I want to integrate that into this portal here. Of course, I also have to authenticate, so I can make sure. It can be checked, is the user allowed to do whatever is part of this use case? But the accessibility is even easier now because it's not a portal, it's something maybe where the users are working in, day out already. So it's very easy, just plug it in here. And again, of course, it could be anything. So here we have an out-of-office scenario where the action, you can pick and choose the user and notification template. And because we have a date time parameter, we automatically translate it into a date time picker, things like that. So that really is I would say, the most easiest way to kind of access everything that you've done with PowerShell to people who have probably no idea that there is some PowerShell involved in whatever your use case is doing. Now, configuration-wise, if we go back to this very first example, now I'm an administrator again here, of course. So here I can see this is the use case. This is the runbook. We call them action. So here you see, okay, there is the script that is being used. We have some queries that are part of this use case. We have a target that we connect to, and we have already some delegations, which are done based on AD groups or Azure AD groups. If we go to the script section here, you can see now all the parameters that are part of this underlying reset password PS1 script. And here we can see these two queries. So meaning instead of having this text field where you would have to type something, it is about providing this list, which is part of this query in the background. And it's cascading, meaning the username result depends on the OU I've selected in step 1. And then, for example, yeah, you would say, okay, this does the user have to change a password? That should be the default. Nobody should be able to change it. So what I can do, I can click on the hide button here. I can save it. And if I go back to this use case, then we should see that as a user, I don't see this parameter anymore. It is used, of course, for the execution, but this is nothing the user has to be able to make any changes or to see it. And of course, the tendency of all the people using ScriptRunner is to hide as many parameters as possible and show only the parameters where we need some interaction by the user. So for example, we didn't see the webhook URL that does the communication to the Teams channel because why should we, right? So it's all set to hidden. So this is how you control what is visible and what is not visible. Here are the targets that we are working with. So in this case, it's my AD. I have my PowerShell options. So here I can say I want to run it in Windows PowerShell, or maybe I want to run it in PowerShell 7. Here, very interesting, I can, or you can, centralize your functions. You can put your functions into library scripts, and then you can say, okay, whenever I want to communicate with this Teams channel in the background, the function for it is in this MST library PS1, which is exactly the case in this use case. And then I can just call this function from a main script, and it is available because these functions in this library script are preloaded automatically for this particular action, which means whenever you have things that you need multiple times for connecting, disconnecting to SQL or things like that, you can put them into library scripts. And if you need to change them or add new functions, you put it into the library scripts and they become available immediately. Then here we have the delegation already configured, AD groups in my case. So these are the different roles. So we looked at the admin role and the help desk role. And then there are some additional display options for these different languages. So here you see this markup information that we saw in the action. There are icons and colors. And that's how you create this delegation use case. Now, in parallel, of course, you could say I have all kinds of things that should happen in a scheduled base. And then that's what you can do exactly right here, where you say, okay, this is something I want to do should run every day, 9 o'clock, or maybe every 30 minutes, or maybe every Friday, or 3 times a month. And then here, of course, you can also enable then the email notification for either if something doesn't work, or maybe you want to send some information out. All the time, we see this being done in combination with pushing messages to Teams or Slack, for example, as well. As a second parallel channel of putting information out there if something happens. And the third way of triggering the scripts would be using connectors. So you have different connectors. This is different names here. In fact, we're talking about generic REST connectors. So whenever you have a system that's able to talk REST, you can just do it. And as a very simple example, so right here, I can show you one example of, I guess, maybe starting a VM. I don't know. We'll see. So what happens here is you are using, or I'm using this script here, which is part of the installation, which creates the JSON data, connects to the ScriptRunner backend, and I'm giving the information, okay, which VM I want to work with, what is the action I want to trigger, what are the parameter names, and what are the parameter values. And then I'm running it, hopefully. Does it? Okay, it's already stopped. So let's take the other one. So now we're not stopping, but starting, and that should probably work. And now, based on the calls in this script, I'm connecting to the backend system and ScriptRunner backend system and telling it what to do. So, and that's the basic idea. And that, as I said, we see a lot of different scenarios out there with organizations connecting Jira, ServiceNow, SAP, SharePoint workflows, all kinds of systems, monitoring systems, PITG, for example, to trigger the execution. And at the end, it's either positive or negative, the result, we'll see. But in both cases, what we will see for all these executions, no matter if it's done interactive or scheduled or based on web service connectors, this takes quite some time. Okay, but let's go back to the monitoring, because here, when I'm in the monitoring, I can actually see what happened in the past. And here it's all green, which is nice. If I'm interested in all the things that didn't work, I can change the filter and I can say, okay, show me why this didn't work, and probably the connection was not possible to my VMware environment, which, by the way, is just a Docker container which is simulating a VMware environment in the background, which I think is a pretty cool thing. All right, so but if things are working, let's go into this one here. We can see this was an action that got triggered by a connector. We can see all the parameters. This would have okay. This would have been if I would have done this in the browser, that would have been the result message. Okay, this is more the serious one, and you can see the report here. So this is where you can see look into the underlying PowerShell host, and here we can see that. So this was the communication. This was the use case with the ChatGPT. We can see it got triggered by user Tina. We can see what was the parameters, and I can see all the report information and also the result message of this particular use case. And if I'm selecting more than one, I can very easily compare the results. So if I want to find out, maybe I'm in the process of creating something new, and I want to see if the results are different between different executions, I can do that very easily. That's also something we added to help to analyzing. And analyzing also means you can work with all kinds of filters. I want to see all the activities that were done against my Active Directory back target, so I can see all this information here. So this is the report. The statistics is more like focusing on, okay, how much time and money did we actually save by automating? And then there is a live monitor, meaning if I'm triggering something that takes a little bit, like creating a report, we could take this one here. Then I'm starting it here. And if I go into the live monitor, I can see now that it has been triggered by a user, and I can take a look at what happens while the script is executing, and I can click on the cancel button to stop the execution. Now here, interesting, you can see two areas or two sections, running and queued. So let's say there are 52 scripts that should run at the same time, but you only allow 20 PowerShell hosts in parallel. Or you want to do something against Exchange Online, and there are some thresholds when it comes to parallel connections. Then what happens here is that instead of just stopping the execution and throwing an error, this execution of the scripts can be queued until a connection becomes available again, and then ScriptRunner will continue to run this script, which I think is very, very helpful and interesting, especially in big environment when you have a higher workload of running scripts all the time, combination between schedule stuff, interactive stuff, scripts triggered by connectors, for example, and then these are all things that help to keep a healthy environment, so to speak, and get all the scripts executed the way it's possible based on the connections. Yeah, something else I want to mention, talking about what is new since last year, we now have an official VS Code extension for script runners. So this is how you can directly interact with the script repository in ScriptRunner. It has been available for a long time in the good old ISE, and it's still there. Yeah, and I'm a fan of still of the ISE. I'm honest. Of course, I'm honest. But now we also have this available here, so you can install it. If you're running VS Code, there is this extension available, and there will be some updates coming in one of the next releases. Yeah, so that's as a little number one introduction, but also a what's new about what happens since the last time I had the possibility to talk to you guys about what we are doing. And as I said, so I think being in the Azure Marketplace is a cool thing. Having the possibility to just go to our website and kind of experience all the use cases. I think you can't really run everything because it's just a lab environment, but you get an idea about all the functionalities and what you can do with ScriptRunner. So I think this is really, really helpful. And if you want to know more, of course, I'm happy to talk to you about your individual use cases. And with this, I would just quickly go back to my presentation maybe to come back to exactly this topic here. So you can download the software, 30 days free, and try everything. By the way, also something new. Did I mention it? Well, then if I'm mentioning it twice. So there is no IIS necessary anymore. So there is a .NET based web API that comes with the installation. So when you want to start testing it, the only thing that you need is a Windows Server 2016 or newer, or 2019 or newer, even better, of course, and then you're good to go. Again, or you take it from the Azure Marketplace, or get in touch with me. I think I put all the information in the chat already, but yeah, you can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I would be happy to talk about your PowerShell use cases and how maybe we can make your life easier. And as I mentioned, for our PowerShell user group on the 15th of November, Gail will talk about SQL and PowerShell. I guess the time is not really perfect for your time zone. We'll be in the middle of the night, but we will have also the recording available. So yeah, feel free to register on the meetup page if you want to. Yeah. So, are there any questions? I've
checked chat. No questions in chat. I have a question.
Sure.
It's actually more a question. It's kind of a thought as well. So I was sitting there thinking, I was, with the ScriptRunner server, and I was kind of thinking about the old Exchange Online module and how it's implemented, where essentially what it is just a PowerShell remoting session to a variety of different. It's actually over HTTP, if I recall. But the idea is that it's a PowerShell remoting session to a sorry, I'm just to their web services, and you'd be able
Yeah.
to. And it kind of got me thinking, and I was like, well, is it possible to make the ScriptRunner server itself a PowerShell remoting endpoint? And then what you can do is within your actions that you set up, those permissions, those roles, that you can basically say, all right, I want to expose this as a commandlet that's available through remoting. And then what happens is that basically it looks at the backend service essentially uses session configuration and sorry, I'm just uses session configuration. I don't know why I've got resultant set of policy in my head. It's not resultant set of policy. It's role capabilities.
Okay.
And
Okay.
use role capability to essentially automatically create the configuration that basically a person then can be used to essentially, like, they don't necessarily have to go to the web interface. So you've got, some PowerShell monkey who actually is just like, hey, I've got, like some
Yeah.
code that I just want to run, but I know I've got the script over here. I can, essentially bootstrap half that process, quickly jump in, essentially use the script runner server itself
Yeah.
as essentially a on the fly PowerShell module, which you can basically load using
Ooh.
PowerShell session
Yeah.
or PowerShell remoting with a configuration profile.
That's an interesting idea. I I would think I think with the current implementation that we just looked at today, I think that would be, I'm not sure if it really would be possible, but with the new backend architecture that we will see with this new version coming out next year, where we have, already everything is kind of architectured in a way of having microservices and having a MongoDB in the background, and basically having a foundation to do something like ScriptRunner as a service in the future. I think having this kind of capability, I would have to talk to the development guys, but I could see this being possible, especially because we also want to open up more endpoints in ScriptRunner to trigger things from the outside world.
Yeah.
Which also has to do with the configuration. If you want to create, because you're an MSP and you want to create 25 new or 65 tenants, you don't want to do this manually. So technically, I would say the new architecture should be able to allow that. Maybe not exactly in the way that you described, but having some possibilities from the outside to use ScriptRunner functionalities. It's definitely something that we will see there. I haven't seen it in detail yet, so that's why I cannot tell you yes or no. But from the overall concept, the new backend is definitely. I would say at least prepare to do something like this. Let's put it this way at this point. Yeah.
Because that was something I was thinking about. I was like, that I think would just be like the. I think from a technical implementation, obviously you wouldn't want to expose the raw script. So essentially, what you could have done there essentially is you've already all the heavy lifting's already done within the parameters and the lists. So the only thing that needs to be essentially exposed to the end user is basically essentially like a proxy commandlet. So it looks and feels like what it essentially it's just the web form, but delivered within a PowerShell function itself. It's interesting because I think you could do that. It would be very quick to be able to do. It's just how do you delegate? So you'd probably still execute it through the web engine itself, but it's going to be how do you delegate? Like what that process to delegate access to that is going to look like.
Okay, so the authentication thing needs to be solved. So I think also to make sure that yeah, you allow certain people to do certain things, but not everyone to do everything. So this security layer in between, of course, needs to be there. So that you can make sure, okay, it's yes, you can allow this to certain people, but they also can only do, just like with the connectors today. You can say, okay, a connector coming from ServiceNow is not able to run a reset password, but they can run a software deployment or the creation of a new user or starting an onboarding, things like that. So this kind of authentication security level, definitely, of course, will always be there and needs to be there. But
I was going to say, you could just create your own DSC configuration that basically, essentially, that talks to the service somehow. So it basically can talk to the backend service, and it goes, all right, generate me my so the way I kind of see it is that each, like, you know how you have each directory within ScriptRunner, so you've got like dev, you've got exchange online, so each area would essentially become its own module, and then within that module you would then use role capabilities to basically delegate to what users have access to what. So the idea would be then is the role capability would then essentially be the governance behind the physical governance, I'll say the physical governance, but the actual permission structure behind the session configuration. And then the session configuration can be, you know, hey, this is blur. And then when the end user goes to remote in, the role capability will be what's going to be presented. So they will only have access to, you know, new AD user or reset AD user, and it'll be those parameters within there. So you could limit it that way. It's an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, because this is kind of, for me, this would be like a, let's say, virtual containerizing of something that contains the role, actions, and the way it can be executed. And then you can take this, and this is pretty nice idea, because then you could just also move it around through different servers and saying, okay, I have, because that's one of the ideas of the new architecture as well, having the server farm where you can move around. And then in this case, it would not just be a user, it would be like a container that contains everything that can be triggered from the outside, as instead of just having, here is the credential and here is the use case and here's the script. It would be this, let's say, containerizing of the use cases, including all, let's say, the logistics that we need to make it accessible from the outside world. I think that's an interesting concept. Yeah. So it's like, I just thought this is like having Lego and putting it together in a different way, and then give it to someone and say, okay, this is what you can do. This would allow us.
PowerShell remoting can operate over SSH now, so realistically, like, you don't necessarily have to expose that direct endpoint, but you can put it behind some sort of governance publicly. And it just means then, like if you're an MSP, you're like on a client side and you're like, hey, I need to go and run a script, and I can't, you know, I don't have access to be able to go and copy it, but I do have access to be able to do X, Y, and Z. You go, yeah, bang, 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 bang. Okay, import that module, bang. Okay, cool. Yep, load it in. Okay, you know, run that, what you need to do. So anyway,
it's as I said, it's an interesting idea to throw around to see if this could be an interesting way to put together kind of the pieces that we already have, but in a way that it serves something like that, like you described. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting discussion with our development guys. Yeah, great idea. As I said, so for the solution as it is right now, difficult for the new backend, where we have much more flexibility in putting together the building blocks. I think that would be something Yeah, at least we could think of a way of doing it, of
Well,
getting a concept.
Well, the other question you could ask is that does the new backend engine support plugins or third-party plugins?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question.
Because then you could just basically open source it in the context where you could go, all right, this could just be, an installable plugin where people can go, all right, I want to be able to, enable remoting.
Yeah.
Bam. I don't know how.
That's
yeah.
I know that this is at least I don't know what the development team really does, but this to me is like the idea that we already had a while ago with the development guys. We said, okay, it would be cool to have kind of a ScriptRunner marketplace where you could have this kind of plugins that you can say, okay, I can make this, I can add this to the configuration, but of course making sure it's tested and it doesn't, it has to have a run space that is not affecting the whole script runner if something goes wrong. So these are of course things that needs to be considered. But this fits to this marketplace idea that we are throwing around for quite some time already, and it could very well be something that in this direction. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
cool
anyway,
stuff.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Haiku, for an awesome session. ScriptRunner is always great. It's always great. I always like to see what's going on. If you've got any further questions, I've posted, you can reach out to Haiku via his socials. They have been posted in the chat. This recording will go up on YouTube. I totally forgot to do last month's one. I just posted it tonight. So I'm going to make an effort to do it tomorrow night. So tomorrow first thing when I wake up, I'll do it then. And then I think that's pretty much it. Thanks everybody for joining, and next month Nick Bissell, and have a great evening, morning, or day wherever you are. All right. Anyway, bye for now.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye.
Bye.